we talk about, I'm first going to tell you this is best practice, what we know as best practice. First, all exemptions should only be granted by MDs authorized by law. No MDA that is not authorized by law should grant any exemption. By law, not policy. And it must be for purposes authorized by law, and such purposes should be in public interest. Number two, accounting officers of MDAs should not sign contracts with companies which contain exemption without the endorsement of the Federal Minister of Finance, the Honorable Minister of Finance. Now, what I mean in this, you see some contracts, and I really don't know why. You see some contracts, this is a private person doing business, and he gets a contract that is doing for government, and is requesting for waiver. And that MDA that grants the contract, and now goes ahead and says, we will grant you waiver. And they will even write on behalf of that contractor to the Minister of Finance and say, grant this contractor waiver. I mean, the contractor has been given a contract. Why not leave the import duty, the VAT, leave it there and pay him? So this one that accounting officers of MDA should not sign, their contract should not be signed, except the Honorable Minister of Finance has endorsed that it should be signed. Let me tell you a short story. Again, this is off record. Some years back, laws providing power to grant exemptions should contain eligibility criteria. These are some of the things I talked about. It should contain eligibility criteria. Number 4, decision to grant exemption should only be made after the revenue to be foregone estimates have been made and communicated to the decision makers. So before you grant that exemption, the estimates of the revenue that will be foregone would have done that. So government will know what they are going to lose. All exemption decisions should be in writing with the name of the beneficiaries, clear terms and conditions, specific duty, tax levies, treatment as appropriate. What I mean here is that, yes, the name of the beneficiary should be there, but the terms and conditions should be stated very clearly. Again, this is for monitoring purpose. Because if the terms and conditions are not there, and maybe Ministry of Finance or any other MDA goes to monitor, it will be like you just go there, they show you a factory and say, oh, this is what we are doing, and you say you are doing well. But if there are clear terms and conditions, you will know what you are looking for. So you will have indicators that you are going to monitor, that you are going to verify whether they are there or not. Then the procedures for the application process, I talked about it. The importing, exporting, as well as tax reporting processes should be available to the public. We should have clear application process for these exemptions, for the one we want to grant. Then number 3, this is number 7 now. Detailed monthly reports of an exemption quantum should be available for fiscal monitoring. And if we don't keep the data, we will not be able to have what we are going to monitor. So I want to believe that, FRS has the data. Ministry of Finance, I don't know if they have the data, but they should put all this data together for monitoring purposes. The regular exchange of information between FRS and NCS on exemption activity for the purpose of risk management and post-audit. You may not agree with me, but let me explain here. Now, an importer brings in goods from ECOWAS, and he says, these goods, I'm bringing it from ECOWAS, so I'm bringing it free of duty, I'm bringing it free of VAT. And there are some criteria before he applies for that ETLS exemption. Now, in that criteria, you may have produced a tax clearance of, maybe he produced a tax clearance that the tax he paid was maybe 100, let's say he said he paid 50 million. Now, this importer is now going to bring good goods of maybe some 10 billion or 100 billion. Can you match that? So if there is exchange of, records between FIRS and NCS, they will know that either you didn't pay the appropriate tax, so then when they do joint audits, they should also note that if he says he brought in goods of maybe 10 billion into the country and he sells with VAT, FIRS should also see whether, the VAT was actually remitted. So it's only with exchange of data that can be achieved. Then, now I wanted to just tell you, this is we will present this tomorrow, so let's leave out this. Let's leave out this. Now, these are the recommendations. This is the recommendation in the National Tax Policy. And this is what, should be the appropriate framework. Any incentive to be granted should be broad, sector-based, tenured, and transparent. This is what the National Tax Policy says. That the incentive that is to be granted should be broad. It shouldn't be for just one taxpayer. It should be for a sector. It's stated in the National Tax Policy. Then it said it should be tenured. That means it should not be permanent. It should be time-based. You can say maybe a tenure of 5 years, 3 years. Then it should be transparent. Then implementation should be properly monitored, evaluated, periodically reported, and kept under review. This is our National Tax Policy. So the policy is there. It's the implementation that we are talking about now. Now, finally, say where the benefits cannot be quantified, qualitative factors must be considered, and tax policies on investment should not promote monopoly, such as entry barriers or otherwise prevent competition. Finally, these are the design features for an ideal tax incentive framework. Number one, there should be adequate evidence to support decision over design. Number two, the objectives and expected results should be clear. Whatever are your objectives and the expected results, they should be clear. Number three, there should be a cost-benefit analysis of the potential impact of incentives. Number four, the incentives should have clear eligibility criteria. These are the things I talked about. As I said, this is going to be short. Number four, the choice of tax instruments needs to be clear. Whether it's corporate taxes, VAT, or any other type of tax, we must state it. Number five, we must also decide whether it's a cost-based incentive or a profit-based incentive we want to grant. And number six, incentives should not be open-ended. I also mentioned that before. We should stop granting incentives that are open-ended. It should be tenured. It should have a sunset clause. Then number 8, the legal basis must be established. No discretionary powers to grant incentives. So all incentives must go through the parliament before becoming law. So I'm saying that we should avoid discretionary grants of incentives. There are some, you will hear that, the Honorable Minister granted, there are some, you hear that it came from the presidency, and National Assembly is not aware of that. Then, number 9, we need to have data. We need to also interrogate data. If we don't have data, there's nothing to interrogate. We must begin to build our data and also begin to interrogate our data. These are some of the things you have in the design, an ideal tax expenditure framework. And finally, public participation in developing tax expenditure. We should allow public participation. For instance, CSOs should be aware that you want to grant a particular incentive. But I know NIPC started it, I think 2 years ago or last year. You will see they bring it out in the newspaper and say, we want to grant this incentive to so company. Then the CSOs will go and a public hearing, and they say, no, it shouldn't be granted. Then they will not grant it. So there should be public consultation. So there might be some others. By the time we meet tomorrow, we'll discuss more. But these are some of the design features that I have seen in some countries. But I want to let us know that there's hardly any country that has gotten it right, even the developed world. UK reported a few years ago, and they were reporting that they have issues with their tax expenditure, the whole UK. So no country has gotten it right. But these are the design features for an ideal tax expenditure. As you can see, I say it's very short. Thank you very much. But tomorrow we can rub minds together and discuss.
Thank you again, Mr. Andrew. That was
Very short.
very short. Thank you for making it short, not very. All right. So, any reactions or questions? Okay, sir. All right.
I want to stand on existing protocols, particularly the one established by the deputy clerk, who profusely commended you. Me, I was thrilled by your level of knowledge on this field. And I was just thinking of how I can go and read accountancy. And when you were saying finally, you said it 5 times. So I was also afraid that this finally did not come to finally. Thank God I made this one very short. The last question I asked, I said whether incentives can be dedicated on the level of revenue. You didn't have said that it is quantum of money that is brought into the country, or maybe quantum of investment, as it were. I know that incentives seems to be an encouragement, and for a developing country, or developing economy, I should think that you can also draw a model that will seem to be an encouragement to other foreign investors or local investors as well, that as their company or organization is growing and making a lot of revenue, that there's certain profits, can be excluded or exempted or granted incentive from tax, as the case may be. Then the other point is when we're saying that the incentives should be uniform. In other words, why would one should be symmetric? Why would MD reflect CEO give exemption, and the other one is minister, the other one is presidency? And then in one branch also say that there are exemption laws. I should have thought that those exemption laws would have provided or categorized the extent of approval, so to speak. Otherwise, it will be each of the laws that are made. Remember also that some of the agencies there's what we call delegated discretion. Yeah. So they will have been delegated to do this or do that. So I don't see any contradiction there. Thank you.
even in enforcing delegated legislation, the practice in the past that has come in variance with the National Assembly position is that it is not your absolute power.
Okay,
You can make recommendation, but you must bring it back to Parliament for ratification.
yeah, that is.
But most time, the MDAs or so agencies that are giving suit they do not revert back to the National Assembly.
Exactly, sir. Thank you.
That is where the monitoring and evaluation comes in.
Exactly.
Those key indicators, KPI, apply the KPI, so that you will find them. And it makes oversight very difficult.
Yeah.
So I think those are the, in addition to
I
that.
totally agree with you, sir. Yeah.
Okay, any other reaction or question, please, so that we don't stand in the way of our lunch. Okay, if there is no other question, we also just want to use this opportunity to announce that we want to and really want to start by 10 o'clock prompt tomorrow, so that we'll be able to cover for all the topics that we have slated to run through. And if it's possible, we can just try to prompt some of members that we know are on the list. I don't know, maybe Dr. Kefa will be able to announce to us the relevant committees that are supposed to be seated around in the room. That said, lunch is served at the restaurant. The restaurant is